Welcome to the channel.
Hey, Reddit. I never thought I'd be one of those guys typing out their life story like this. But here we are. I guess I just need to get this out of my system. Maybe someone else has been through something similar, or maybe I just want to hear that I'm not crazy. So here's the deal. My name's Bill. I'm 45, been running my own air conditioning business for almost 2 decades. It's not glamorous, but it paid well enough to give my wife, Nancy, and our daughter, Lisa, a good life. Or at least I thought it did. Thought I was doing everything right. Turns out I was just another sucker. Nancy and I had been married for 18 years. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but I never saw any red flags. No major fights, no distance, nothing. Or maybe I was just too busy working my butt off to notice. Lisa had just started college, and I figured this was going to be our time. Time to relax a little, maybe travel, reconnect. I was dead wrong. The day after I dropped Lisa off at her dorm, I came home, expecting a quiet evening. Instead, I found a sheriff waiting for me in my own driveway, holding a folder full of legal papers. Divorce, restraining order. Nancy had it all planned out. She had already changed the locks, frozen our joint accounts, and packed up every single thing that belonged to her, including a lot of stuff that didn't. I didn't even get to walk into my own house. Paul, the sheriff, was a guy I knew. Been over at my place for barbecues. Shot the breeze with me over beers. And yet, here he was acting like I was some kind of criminal. "Bill, I'm just doing my job," he said. Like that was supposed to mean anything to me at that moment. Nancy? She wouldn't even look at me. She stood behind the door like a coward while Paul explained the situation. "You can take what's yours, but you need to be out within the hour," he said. "Let's not make this harder than it needs to be." Harder than it needs to be? Are you kidding me? I tried to talk to her. Asked her why. What the hell was going on? She just mumbled something about falling out of love and needing space. Space. She took the whole damn house. But the kicker? I wasn't as blindsided as she thought I was. Because see, while Nancy was sneaking around, thinking she was pulling the perfect con, she didn't realize something. I had already set a trap of my own. And she was walking right into it, so there I was, standing in my own driveway like a fool while some guy I used to call a friend handed me a stack of papers that said my whole life was over. I looked past Paul, tried to meet Nancy's eyes, but she just stood there behind the door, arms crossed, like she couldn't be bothered to deal with me, like I was the one who had done something wrong. I could hear the clinking of boxes inside. She had people in there, moving stuff around, like she had already erased me from the house. That's when it hit me. This wasn't something she just decided last week. This had been in the works for a long time. I kept my voice steady. "Nancy, at least tell me why. After 18 years, I deserve that much." She let out this fake, tired sigh, like I was inconveniencing her. "Bill, it's just not working anymore. I need to do what's best for me." I almost laughed. "Best for you? What about Lisa? What about the life we built? What about the business, the one she helped me manage?" She was acting like this was some self-discovery journey, like she was the victim in all this. Paul put a hand on my shoulder like he was doing me some kind of favor. "Come on, Bill. Let's not drag this out." Yeah, let's not drag this out. I had no choice. I grabbed a couple of bags, stuff I could carry, and walked away from the house I paid for, the house I built my life in. The whole time, Nancy wouldn't even step outside. Just let Paul handle everything. And then, as I was walking to my truck, something caught my eye. Car parked down the street. A car that didn't belong to any of my neighbors. A black Mercedes. And sitting inside, trying real hard not to be seen, was a man I knew all too well. Rick, my so-called business partner. It all clicked in that moment. This wasn't just Nancy deciding she wanted space. This was a full-on setup. Rick, that snake. 4 years, he had been my right-hand man at the business. We started out small, working side by side, sweating through summers installing AC units, hustling to build something real. I trusted him. Let him handle a lot of the paperwork while I focused on running the jobs. We were supposed to be a team. And now, here he was, sitting in his shiny black Mercedes, parked down the street from my house, watching everything unfold like some low-budget villain. I stopped dead in my tracks. He must have realized I saw him because he slouched down in his seat like that was going to make him invisible. Pathetic. I turned back to Paul. You sure this is about Nancy needing space? Or am I getting kicked out so she and Rick can move in together? That finally got a reaction. Nancy, still hiding inside like a coward, shouted, "That's not true, Bill. Don't make this worse than it already is." Worse? Oh, she had no idea how much worse it was going to get. I didn't even bother arguing. What was the point? The second I saw Rick's car, I knew this wasn't just some ugly divorce. This was a damn ambush. I clenched my jaw, turned on my heel, and got into my truck. I wasn't about to give either of them the satisfaction of seeing me break. As I drove away, I kept an eye on the mirror. Rick still hadn't moved. Coward. He didn't even have the guts to get out and face me like a man. But that was fine. Because what they didn't know, what Nancy and Rick were about to find out the hard way, was that I had already set my own trap. See, I'm not an idiot. I may not have seen the signs at first, but something had felt off for months. Nancy had been distant, secretive. Rick had been weird about the business finances, always brushing off my questions. And so, a few weeks back, I did something I never thought I'd have to do. I started digging, and what I found, oh man, they were going to regret ever thinking they could pull one over on me. This wasn't just about my marriage. This was about my business, my money, my entire life. And I was about to take it all back that I drove straight to a motel on the edge of town. Heart pounding, hands gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. I wasn't angry, I was focused. Because now I knew two things for sure. Nancy had been planning this for months. Rick was involved. What I didn't know yet was how deep it went. But I had a feeling I was about to find out. See, a few weeks back, I started noticing little things. Nancy started staying late at book club more often. She got herself a new phone. One she was real careful about keeping locked. And Rick? He started acting weird whenever I asked about the company's finances. Normally, I trusted him to handle the bookkeeping. I was always more of the hands-on guy. But suddenly, invoices weren't adding up. Jobs that we finished weren't showing in the system. Money was moving around, but I wasn't the one moving it. So, I did something I never had to do before. I logged into the company's accounts myself. And that's when I found it. Nancy's name. Rick had been quietly funneling company money into a separate account under Nancy's name for almost a year. That's when I knew they weren't just having an affair. They were robbing me blind. Now, sitting in that motel room with my laptop, I pulled up the documents I had copied weeks ago. Bank statements, fake invoices, transfers, all of it. And I knew exactly what I had to do. See, Nancy thought she had everything locked up nice and tight. The house, the money, even the damn business. She thought by blindsiding me with the divorce and getting the courts on her side, I wouldn't be able to fight back. But she forgot who built this business. And she sure as hell didn't know the one thing that would blow this whole scam wide open. I had a hidden kill switch. Nancy thought she was clever. Rick thought he was slick. They thought they could play me, strip me of my business, my house, and my dignity. But what they didn't know was that years ago, when I first started the business, I set up a little insurance policy just in case. See, when you build something from the ground up, you don't just trust people blindly. Not even your business partner. So from the beginning, I had a contingency plan written into our business contract. A clause that Rick had probably forgotten about. A dissolution clause. Basically, if my partner, Rick, was caught embezzling, engaging in fraud, or doing anything to financially damage the company, his shares in the business would immediately revert back to me. No buyout, no payout. Gone. And guess what? I had all the proof I needed. The bank transfers under Nancy's name, embezzlement, the missing invoices, fraud, the money Rick siphoned off, financial misconduct. With all this evidence, I could legally strip everything away from him. And the best part? Since he was transferring money to my wife, it would drag Nancy into the fire right alongside him. I stared at the screen, my fingers hovering over my keyboard. I could already picture it. Rick and Nancy, thinking they had won, only to wake up and find out that everything they stole was about to be ripped away. I cracked my knuckles. Time to set the trap. The next morning, I woke up early, grabbed a coffee, and sat down with my laptop. It was time to move. First, I made a call to my lawyer, Ed. Solid guy. No nonsense. He'd handled my business contracts when I first started out, so he knew exactly what was in them. Bill, he said after I laid everything out for him. This is open and shut. You have the proof. You enforce that dissolution clause, and Rick loses every damn thing overnight. Good, I said. Let's do it. But I wasn't done yet. See, I didn't just want to take back my business, I wanted them to feel it. I wanted Nancy and Rick to wake up thinking they had won, only to realize they had played themselves. So I made another call. This one to my accountant, Phil. Another no BS guy. He helped me pull every single financial record tied to the business and highlighted something real interesting. Nancy had personally signed off on one of the fraudulent transfers. That was the nail in the coffin. Not only was Rick about to lose his share of the business, but because Nancy's name was tied to the fraud, it put her divorce settlement in jeopardy. She thought she was walking away with half of everything. Now, she was walking into a potential legal nightmare. But I still wasn't done. Before pulling the trigger, I sent one last text. To Rick. Meet me at the office. We need to talk. He replied a few minutes later. Busy today. Let's do next week. Yeah, no. He was stalling, probably thinking I was scrambling after the divorce ambush. So I sent him another message. I know about the money, Rick. 3 dots appeared immediately. Then they vanished. Then they appeared again. Then nothing. Yeah. He knew he was screwed. I smirked, grabbed my keys, and headed to the office. Time to watch the rats scramble. I pulled up to the office and parked right outside, taking my time stepping out of the truck. No rush. I wanted Rick to sweat. When I walked in, there he was, sitting at his desk pretending to be busy, but I could see it all over his face. He looked like a kid caught stealing candy, shifting in his chair, hands twitching. Bill, he said, forcing a smile. Didn't expect you so soon. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. Yeah? Didn't expect you'd be stealing from me either, but here we are. That wiped the fake smile right off his face. Look, Bill, he started, but I held up a hand. Save it. I pulled out a folder and tossed it onto his desk. Bank transfers. Faked invoices. Every dollar you and Nancy siphoned off. I got it all. His eyes flicked down to the papers, then back up at me. He was trapped and he knew it. You don't understand, he stammered. Nancy told me. I slammed my hand down on the desk. I don't give a damn what Nancy told you. This is my business. My money. And thanks to that contract you signed years ago, your share? Gone. Rick's face went pale. You can't just. Oh, I already did. I grinned. Lawyer's handling it now. As of today, you're out. He sat there, stunned, like his little brain was short-circuiting. Then he did exactly what I expected. He tried to weasel out. Okay, Bill, listen, he said, hands up. Maybe we can work something out. I mean, yeah, some money got moved around, but Nancy, she was the one pushing for it. She said you'd never notice, and I laughed. Wow, you're already throwing her under the bus? Didn't take long. Rick swallowed hard. I was stupid, okay? I messed up. But you and me, Bill, we go way back. Maybe we can figure something out. Maybe. I held up my hand again. Nah, we're done. Then I walked out. Let him sit with that. Let him feel what it was like to lose everything in a single moment. Just like they tried to do to me. But I wasn't finished yet. Nancy was next. After dealing with Rick, I drove straight to the house, my house. The one Nancy thought she had successfully stolen out from under me. I wasn't even mad anymore. I was focused. Nancy had spent months, maybe even years, planning this. She thought she had covered every angle, thought I'd just roll over and accept it. But she never saw this coming. I pulled into the driveway and stepped out. The locks had been changed, sure, but that didn't matter. I had no intention of stepping inside. She was going to come out to me. I pulled out my phone and called her. It rang twice before she picked up, her voice way too calm. Bill, she said like she was talking to a stranger. This isn't a good time. Yeah? Make time, I said. Come outside. She hesitated. Why? Because if you don't, I'm about to call Lisa and explain exactly what you and Rick have been up to. Silence. Then the front door cracked open, and Nancy stepped out. She still wouldn't meet my eyes, arms crossed like she was the victim here. What do you want? She asked, her voice clipped. I smirked. You really think you won, huh? She blinked, confused. Bill, I don't. I held up my phone, already pulling up an email. See this? It's from my lawyer. As of this morning, Rick is out of the company. His shares? Gone. And since you were involved in the fraud, guess what? Your little divorce payday? That's gone too. Her face drained of color. That's not possible. Oh, it's very possible, I said, enjoying every second. You stole from the business, Nancy. And courts don't look too kindly on fraudulent activity. She opened her mouth, closed it, then shook her head. You don't have proof. I laughed. Really? Because I have bank records with your name on them. Her breathing got shallow, and for the first time, she looked scared. You? Bill, listen, I didn't. Oh, now you want to talk? I cut her off. Where was all this let's talk when you blindsided me with divorce papers? When you locked me out of my own damn house? You don't get to play innocent now. She swallowed hard. Bill, I was manipulated. Rick. He convinced me this was the best way. Save it, I said. You made your choice. She was trembling now, eyes darting around like she was looking for an escape. That's when I pulled out one last card. I'm giving you two options, Nancy. She stiffened. What? One, you fight me in court. We drag this out for months, and I expose everything. Lisa finds out. Your friends find out. Hell, the cops might even get involved if I decide to push this far enough. She swallowed. And two, I stepped closer, lowering my voice. You walk away. No money, no house, no nothing. You take whatever you packed up and you go. Right now. Her lips parted slightly, shock washing over her face. You can't do that. I leaned in, voice steady. Watch me. She stood there frozen, her mind racing. I had her. Checkmate. Nancy stood there, completely frozen. I could see it, the wheels turning in her head, scrambling for a way out, trying to figure out how she could flip this in her favor. But she couldn't. Not this time. I had her cornered, and she knew it. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Bill, please. Let's be reasonable. I laughed. Actually laughed. Reasonable. I echoed. Like how you were reasonable when you locked me out of my own house. Or when you siphoned money out of my business. That kind of reasonable? Her face twisted. Like she wanted to cry but knew it wouldn't work on me anymore. You have to understand, she started. I don't have to understand anything, Nancy. I took another step closer, keeping my voice calm, controlled. You made your bed. Now you can lie in it. She looked down, her breathing shaky. I don't have anywhere to go. Not my problem. You had a whole plan, didn't you? I shot back. Where were you planning to go before I caught you? Rick's place. Her silence was answer enough. I shook my head, disgusted. Figures. She blinked rapidly, looking everywhere but at me. I can fix this, Bill. We don't have to do this. I tilted my head. Fix what exactly? The fact that you cheated me out of everything? Or the fact that I caught you? A tear slipped down her cheek. For the first time, she actually looked scared. Good. I pulled out my phone again. You have 5 minutes to decide, Nancy. Walk away now or we go nuclear. Your choice. She clenched her jaw, hands shaking. But before she could say another word, a car came rolling down the street and pulled up next to the house. I turned, and the second I saw who it was, I smirked. Rick. Perfect timing. Rick's car rolled to a stop right in front of us. The second he saw me standing there, his face twisted into something between panic and frustration. Nancy turned to him like a lifeline. Big mistake. Rick stepped out, trying to act like he still had control. Bill, he said, forcing a smile. Let's talk about this. I crossed my arms. We already talked, Rick. You're out of the business. And now, you're about to be out of whatever little scheme you and Nancy cooked up. Nancy's head snapped toward Rick. Wait, what? I smirked. Oh, he didn't tell you? I turned to her. Yeah, Rick signed a contract when we started this business. The second he got caught stealing, his shares went back to me. Nancy's face drained of color. She turned to Rick, eyes wide. You told me we'd be fine. You said we'd be set. Rick clenched his jaw. I didn't think he'd actually. You didn't think, period. I cut in. Neither of you did. Nancy whipped back around to me. Bill, please, we can figure this out. No, I said firmly. We're done. She swallowed, her hands shaking. But I have nothing now. I tilted my head. Yeah? How does it feel? Her eyes welled up with tears. I turned back to Rick. And you're finished. Don't even think about coming near my business again. As of today, you have nothing. Rick's fists clenched, but he didn't say a word. Nancy wiped at her face, trying to pull herself together. Bill, what about Lisa? There it was. Her last desperate card. You want to talk about Lisa now? I shook my head. She'll find out everything. And she'll know exactly who ruined this family. Nancy crumpled right there on the porch. Shoulders shaking, hands covering her face. Rick just stood there, stiff as a board. He knew there was nothing left to say. I took one last look at them, then turned and walked back to my truck. I had one, and they both knew it. I sat in my truck for a moment, just watching. Nancy was still on the porch, shaking, probably realizing for the first time just how badly she had screwed up. Rick stood there like a statue, fists clenched, his mind racing for a way out. But there wasn't one. They had spent months plotting against me. And in less than 24 hours, I had ripped everything away from them. Felt good. Damn good. I turned the ignition and pulled away from the house. My house. Leaving them both standing there in their wreckage. It wasn't my problem anymore. But I wasn't completely done yet. The fallout begins. I spent the next couple of days making sure every single loose end was tied up. First, I had my lawyer draft up the official paperwork removing Rick from the business. No loopholes. No second chances. He was out forever. Then, I made sure Nancy's financial mess was crystal clear to the divorce lawyers. She had no claim to my business. No claim to my money. Nothing. And Lisa? I wasn't about to let Nancy spin this her way. I drove up to her college the next weekend, took her out for dinner, and told her everything. First, she didn't want to believe it. She kept shaking her head, saying, Mom wouldn't do that. She wouldn't. Then I pulled out the bank records, the emails, the fake invoices, cold, hard proof. Lisa went pale. She lied to me, she whispered. Yeah, I said. She did. Tears welled up in her eyes, and I could see the betrayal sinking in. She had always been close to Nancy, always looked up to her. Now that image was shattered. She called me the other night, Lisa said softly. Told me you were being unreasonable, that you were trying to ruin her. I laughed, shaking my head. She ruined herself. Lisa was quiet for a long time, just picking at her food. Then, finally, she looked up at me. I don't think I want to go home for the holidays, she said. That was all I needed to hear. Nancy had lost Lisa a week past. Then too. I expected some kind of reaction from Nancy, anger, desperation, anything. But she went completely silent. Then one night my phone buzzed. Nancy. I let it ring. She tried again. And again. Finally, she sent a text. Bill, please. I need to talk. I stared at the screen. Now she wanted to talk? After everything? I almost ignored it. Almost. But curiosity got the better of me. I texted back, say what you need to say. Her response came fast. Not over text. Please, just meet me. For a second, I considered telling her to go straight to hell. But then I thought, no. I wanted to see this. I wanted to hear what pathetic excuse she had now. So I agreed. One last meeting. The plea for mercy. We met at a little diner on the edge of town. When I walked in, She was already there, sitting in a booth, looking like a complete wreck. Puffy eyes, messy hair, like she hadn't slept in days. She looked up at me, her eyes pleading. Bill. I slid into the seat across from her, keeping my face blank. Talk. She hesitated, then sighed. I messed up. I raised an eyebrow. No kidding. Her fingers twisted together. I thought Rick told me we'd be set. He said we'd take over the business, that you wouldn't fight back. I didn't think it would. I held up a hand. Stop. Just stop. She shut her mouth. I shook my head. You didn't think? Nancy, you planned this for months. You stole from me. You tried to leave me with nothing. And now that it backfired, you want sympathy? Her lip trembled. I don't know what to do. I lost everything. I leaned back, crossing my arms. Sounds like a you problem. Tears welled up in her eyes. Bill, please. Lisa won't even talk to me. I exhaled slowly. Yeah, because you lied to her. She swallowed hard, then did something I never expected. She reached across the table and grabbed my hand. I froze. Bill, she whispered, her voice breaking. Can't we fix this? I miss you. I miss us. I yanked my hand back. Are you serious? She nodded. I actually laughed. Nancy, let me make something very clear. I don't miss you. I don't miss us. I'm not some backup plan just because your little scheme blew up in your face. Her face crumbled. I stood up. We're done. Forever. Her shoulders shook as I walked away, leaving her sitting there, broken, alone, and with nothing left. Exactly how she left me. After shutting Nancy down, I figured I was done. She was out of my life, out of my business, and out of luck. But there was still one loose end. Rick. See, I knew a guy like Rick wasn't just going to take the loss quietly. He had already proven he was a snake. The question was, what was he going to try next? I didn't have to wait long to find out. The desperate move. A few days after meeting Nancy, I got a call from one of my employees. Mark. Solid guy. Been with the company for years. Boss, he said. You're not going to believe this. Try me. Rick's been calling around, trying to poach clients. I nearly burst out laughing. Of course he was. The man had nothing left, no business, no money, no credibility. So now he was trying to weasel his way into my client list, hoping he could scrape together some kind of comeback. Pathetic. You get any names? I asked. Mark chuckled. Oh yeah, he's not exactly subtle. Left messages for at least 5 of our regulars, promising better prices and premium service. I grinned. Good. Let him dig his own grave. Because what Rick didn't realize was that I had one last trick up my sleeve. The final blow. That same night, I made a few calls to every major contractor and supplier in town. See, Rick wasn't just trying to steal my clients. He was trying to start over. Problem was, he had burned too many bridges. I made sure of it. I called up every big name in the industry, every supplier he'd need credit with, every contractor he might try to work under. And I laid it out for them. Rick stole from me. He committed fraud. He's a liability. I didn't even have to convince them. His reputation was already in the toilet. Within a week, Rick was completely blacklisted. The breaking point. 2 weeks later, I got a text from an unknown number. Rick, you win. I have nothing. I lost everything. I just needed a chance. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I deleted it. He didn't deserve a response. Rick had made his choices. Now he had to live with them. With Rick blacklisted and Nancy out of my life, things finally started to settle. For the first time in months, I wasn't waking up thinking about revenge. Wasn't checking my phone expecting another desperate plea from Nancy or some pathetic stunt from Rick. It was done. Nancy's last attempt. But just when I thought she had finally accepted her fate, Nancy tried one last move. I was at the office late one night when I saw a familiar car pull up outside. Nancy. I sighed. What now? She stepped out, hesitated, then walked to the door. She looked worn out. I opened it before she could knock. What do you want? She fidgeted, eyes downcast. Bill. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I studied her face. This wasn't like before. No fake tears, no manipulation. Just defeat. I lost everything, she whispered. Lisa won't return my calls. I can't get a job because I don't have anything to fall back on. I don't know what to do. I leaned against the doorframe. I felt nothing. No anger. No satisfaction. Just nothing. Not my problem, Nancy. She swallowed hard. You really don't care anymore, do you? I shook my head. Not even a little. Tears welled up in her eyes, but I didn't care. I stepped back and shut the door in her face. I was done. A fresh start. The next day, I booked a trip. Now that I wasn't wasting my energy on revenge, I figured it was time to start living. New places, new people, and maybe, just maybe, a new future. Nancy and Rick? They were nothing but a bad chapter in a book I had already closed. I spent the next few months rebuilding. Not just my business, not just my finances, but myself. Without Nancy and Rick weighing me down, things took off. Clients who had heard about what happened rallied behind me, loyal to the guy who actually built the business. Lisa, she stayed with me every holiday, barely speaking to Nancy. That bridge wasn't completely burned, but Nancy had to live with the consequences of her own actions. And me? I was thriving. Where are they now? Rick? Last I heard, he left town. Tried to start over somewhere else, but word got around. Nobody trusts a fraud. Nancy? She ended up renting a small apartment in the next town over. No job, no money, no friends. She reached out a few times, always looking for sympathy. I ignored every message. Because here's the thing. I didn't need revenge anymore. The best revenge wasn't ruining them. It was living well. And that's exactly what I did. The final chapter. One night, I sat outside, watching the sunset from my back porch. My porch. The same house Nancy tried to take from me. A message popped up on my phone. A new number. A single text. I regret everything. I wish I could take it back. I stared at it for a second. Then I smiled. And deleted it. Game over. I won.
Bye.